What's up? It's Jeremy Picker from Amber Creative.
This is Deanna with In the Zoning and Print Girl Mafia.
This is Ray Weiss with Printing United Alliance.
You're listening to the Two Regular Guys podcast.
Hosted by Terry Combs RG, Regular Guy, and Aaron Montgomery.
The place to be for industry news.
The best dad jokes on earth, along with relevant topics to apparel decorators.
Fashion to the people.
All right, welcome into the show. It is Friday, August 16th, 2024. I'm Terry Combs, and you can find me at terrycombs.com.
And my name is Aaron Montgomery with our Success Group, and my mission is to inspire you to fall deeper in love with your business. Terry, today we've got an excellent show planned for you guys. Again, I know I say that every week, but I truly mean it. And if you guys feel like Cassie's taking over, that's a good thing. But we've got Cassie Green joining us again here this week. She was on with Brandy, and she is bringing another friend along. You guys are probably familiar. We had Gary and Cassie on not too terribly long ago to talk all about sustainability. So I'm sure we'll touch on that topic again today. But we're going to hit heavily some of the things going on with OSHA regulations. And again, as I said, we'll touch on some more sustainability stuff as well. But we want to know what's happening with OSHA and how that's affecting the apparel industry. And Gary and Cassie are just wealth of knowledge. And we had a blast last time we got to talk to them. So I expect nothing less, Terry.
Absolutely, 100%. And make sure you stay until the very end and get your helping of the secret sauce. This week, Eric is going to be jumping on this side of the camera and delivering a delicious New Mexico-style secret sauce about when to break out the stock fonts for embroidery.
All right, good. Be delicious. I think that what's that, Christmas chilies, Eric? I think that's I'm getting the head shake. All right, good. Speaking of Cassie, she is actually pulling double duty for us this week. And not only is she going to be a guest, but she is also going to share the news with us this week, Terry. So we've really put her to work. We'll put her on the payroll. Eric, you'll have to share one of the M&Ms with her. Okay. So Terry, you ready to bring Cassie in here for the news?
I am. Let's hear the news.
For the record, love M&Ms, so I will take it. Awesome. So thanks for having me for the news. First and foremost, lots of feel-good stories for us this week, which obviously brings a smile to my face. Hopefully it brings a smile to all of your faces. First headline, headwear maker Apparel sponsors youth golf program First Tee. So Bourbon, Missouri-based headwear manufacturer Apparel is known for its golf hats. They announced a 1-year sponsorship of First Tee, which is a nonprofit organization that helps young people build character and learn life values through golf. Apparel's philanthropic organization called the Apparel Foundation was established in 2023 and is the one behind the sponsorship. As a cause-inspired partner of First Tee, the Apparel Foundation will engage with First Tee HQ and chapters across the U.S. There are chapters in all 50 U.S. states. This includes supporting events, community programs, and more. Apparel says its philanthropic foundation was established to support programs like First Tee, programs that are driving the game of golf for juniors. Second positive headline, and for the record, I love sharing this positive news from Gildan. Gildan announces Global Employee Volunteer Month. Gildan announces its inaugural Global Employee Volunteer Month, which kicked off here in August. According to the company, the initiative aims to support local communities, reinforce the importance of philanthropy, and bolster a sense of togetherness and a culture of giving within the organization. Throughout the month, Gildan employees across the majority of its regions are volunteering their time for a variety of charitable initiatives. These support education, the protection of natural resources, and other areas aligned with the company's community engagement policy. Final headline for everybody this week. This is kind of a big one for us. ASI and Printing United Alliance launched dual membership. So the Advertising Specialty Institute, or ASI, announces a dual membership offering with Printing United Alliance. providing promo, print, and graphic arts professionals unified access to benefits that can help position them as comprehensive one-stop shops. The membership is available to new members of both organizations. So you probably all remember a little while ago, we announced a partnership with ASI. So this is part of that whole thing. The collaboration builds on the previously announced partnership agreement, providing a complete solution for growth and success. Dual membership benefits include information and education, the Alliance's legislative advocacy efforts, and more. So definitely make sure you click on that link so you can learn more. You can talk to the people at the Alliance. You can talk to ASI, all that good stuff. That's everything for headlines. I'll see you guys in just a little bit.
I like happy news. That was good.
Yeah.
Felt like a little bit of Paul Harvey, and now the rest of the story. Does anybody remember Paul Harvey?
Oh boy, you're dating yourself there, Terry.
I know.
All right. Well, yeah, it's great. And Cassie said she'll be back in a little bit, so don't worry, she'll be back. Today's the official Cassie Green takeover show, I think we should call it, but for good reason, right? She brings some awesome stuff, and she's brought Gary back with her. So, but Terry, we can't do a show now. It's kind of required. I think it's in our new contracts. I don't know if you saw that. I sent that over, your new contract.
DocuSign. Yeah.
Yeah. Dad joke required, right? I think that's it. So regulators, you guys are ready for a dad joke. Terry is bringing the fire here this week. So,
well, since Cassie says in the intro, and the best dad jokes, I felt like I really need to bring it this week. So I'm ready.
Okay. All right. Let's see what you do.
So, Aaron, do you know what it means when your kid says, "I want mommy"?
No. What does that mean, Terry?
Well, they're really saying, "I'd like to speak with your supervisor." We'll see what Cassie thinks.
Yeah. Wow. That is a good one. I actually had not read that until right before you started. And so that's why I was giggling to start. I was like, oh, that is a good one.
And Eric didn't have to translate it. It was no play on words in there.
There we go. All right. Well, hey, real quick, Terry, we've got Dot-Tone Dan jumping in. Dan Campbell. Hello, peoples. So good to see you here, Dan. And
Dan was at the Shirt Lab event last week down in Nashville, and Jay Bassell was there, and he said it was an awesome event. So
awesome.
Yeah.
And then we've got Ramona checking in, Needles McKee there. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here, Ramona. All right. Well, Terry, let's get the housekeeping out of the way, and then let's get Cassie and Gary in here.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we dive in, we want to thank everybody for checking out the Two Regular Guys podcast. And we still need your voices. We would love to have the regulators participate in our show intros. So go to decorators.ink/intro, read a few lines, and be a part of the show. We are always looking for new guests. So if you or anyone you know would like to join us, go to calendly.com/2 regular guys to book a future episode, or email us at info@tworegularguys.com. If you are listening to the podcast version of the show, we would appreciate you sharing the Two Regular Guys podcast with your industry friends so they can become regulators too. And we would also appreciate you giving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Podcast, YouTube Podcast, wherever you do your podcast listening, we are there. Hey, and if you're watching us live right now, please join in with your comments and your questions.
Absolutely. Yeah. For those of you that are tuned in live right now, definitely get into the conversation here. This affects all of us. And so really understanding what's going on and what kind of the future holds when it comes to OSHA and sustainability as well. I don't know if it was just me, but I think there were times in my career where I may have just glossed over this stuff, right? This doesn't really affect me, but the reality is it very much can and should affect you. So get in there, ask whatever questions. What are we missing? What are we not asking that you guys want to know? So speaking of that, Terry, shall we get our guests in here then?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's do it. All right. Well, welcome back, Cassie, and thank you so much for being here again, Gary. How are you guys doing today? Gary, I know we've talked about this being the Cassie takeover, but you're an integral part here. So don't make my conversation make you feel bad.
Well, thanks for having me on. Cassie and I have been working together closely on the OSHA topics as well as the sustainability topics impacting the apparel industry. So we're turning out to be a pretty good team here in terms of communicating what's going on and helping our members understand. And thanks, it was March is when we were last on. I can't believe that time has gone that fast since we were here the last time. So I'm excited to be back. So thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Gary, can you just give us, I know just in case people missed us in March or aren't familiar, can you kind of give us a little bit of your history and how you got to be, I know that you Printing United as the umbrella, but right. With the apparel stuff, that working with Cassie, stuff like that. So just give us a little Gary 101, please.
Well, my formal official title at Printing United Alliance is Vice President of Environmental Health and Safety Affairs. Okay. I've been working in the printing industry in the EHS area for pretty much my entire working career. And that's been over 35 years of doing EHS issues for the printing industry. I first started at Graphic Arts Technical Foundation, which then merged with Printing Industries America, which then merged with SGIA to form Printing United Alliance. So I've been involved in those mergers. Very exciting and good because actually it shows growth. And I think now at Printing United Alliance, we represent all the we call verticals, all segments of the industry. And in my career at GATF-PIA, it was primarily commercial printing, but my exposure into all things digital, into screen printing, industrial printing, I've learned a lot more about what our industry represents, and I've been able to apply a lot of my experiences to the newer segments to me. The segments around for quite some time, but new segments to me. So it's really been I think rewarding for me, under the Printing United Alliance umbrella. Awesome.
For Cassie's bio, please see last week's program.
So no, Cassie, I love that you are working so closely with Gary here too, because again, like Gary talked about, Printing United represents a big umbrella, which is awesome, right? That we get to be part of that big umbrella. I think sometimes we might look at ourselves as a little kind of niche apparel, but that's not the case. And on top of that, we're part of this big umbrella. And I think Apparelist really does a great job tying those things together. Is that kind of, I know we talked about this last week, but that is kind of the goal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks. Being able to work with Gary and all of our subject matter experts at the Alliance has been crucial just because, Gary can attest to this. We did an OSHA webinar earlier this year that brought new members in simply because we provide that connection to, things that they've got to stay up on, help when they need it, especially with OSHA and things like that. Yeah. So I lean on Gary pretty heavily. He's a source in a lot of my sustainability and safety articles. We've done videos. I mentioned the webinar. Gary has been a great partner. So I'm happy to bring him to the apparel community.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would say that webinar was very successful because we raised awareness level within the industry. And as Cassie said, we brought some members on, and a couple comments that we heard back from them were like, hey, I wasn't doing anything in this area, and I think I need to be doing something. Yeah. And the answer is absolutely yes. As soon as you hire one employee and you have one person working for you in a company, guess what? OSHA applies. So, so from that respect, you need to be paying attention to what's happening. And so that webinar really reached a larger audience, and we got some great feedback from it. So
that's awesome. All right. Well, so let's dive into it then, right? There's kind of the talk lately, things I've been hearing more and more about is this proposed carbon black ban. So Gary, let's just dive into the meat of this here. What do we need to know about that? What's the latest on that subject?
Well, it has a very interesting history that starts back last June when it first appeared in legislation introduced in New York State. So New York State included in their legislation, draft legislation, a requirement under what's called extended producer responsibility, EPR, which we'll talk a little bit about that. But as part of that EPR legislation package, they had a ban on toxic chemicals for packaging primarily. And as part of that list of chemicals that they wanted to ban, it included carbon black. And so that really started that process. So last year, the legislation failed to pass. It was introduced very late in the legislative session in New York State. We moved the calendar forward to this year. That legislation was reintroduced in New York State, and that became the focal point or the battleground for our response on the carbon black, because obviously carbon black, as we know in the printing industry, is an essential component of black ink, which of course is an essential way to communicate information to customers, consumers of printed matter. In addition, we know it's the number 4 in a 4-color process printing. And so if you take that away, you have 3 color process printing, which isn't going to end up with very good results.
Doesn't look very good.
Yeah, you're not going to have great results. And the legislation in New York focused on packaging. So that became our central point. We had a lot of problems with the extended producer responsibility requirements as well as the other toxics. We made that our focal point of our effort. And we literally drove that point. We ended up creating a white paper. The concept behind carbon black is that it's toxic. The 2 issues. Number one, it's toxic. But what we have as an industry, and we've worked over the years on this, but we have letters from OSHA, we have letters from the Prop 65 folks, OHIHA, which is the agency that controls them, that basically says carbon black, once it's incorporated into an ink, is no longer toxic. The concern, quite frankly, with carbon black is it's a very fine powder. And so if you inhale a very fine powder, you can cause problems, because the way that our body is set up between our lungs and our nasal passages, we have hairs and we have mucus. It's kind of gross, but it acts as a filter. And so very fine particles get by that filter. And so it can get deep into the lungs and cause issues and concerns. Well, in our use of carbon black, it's in an ink, so it's no longer toxic. And so once it's incorporated into a material or like an ink, it's no longer toxic. So that became our point number 1. Point number 2 is that with certain what we call separation technologies, I'll use a term called MRF, material recovery facility for recycling, carbon black or black plastic is very hard to detect with the old technology. So in other words, if you had a piece of black plastic on a conveyor belt that was going to get separated, the technology didn't recognize it between that and the conveyor belt. So it would just pass through as a contaminant. The new technology that we showed in our paper has solved that problem. And that new technology is fantastic and doesn't have a problem separating black plastic. So our whole point was that it shouldn't be on the list as a toxic. It shouldn't be banned because it's non-separable. It is separable. And black plastic is perfectly recyclable. So with that being said, though, the forces that were pushing this are very powerful, extremely powerful forces that were pushing the bill. And so to make a long story short, the bill actually was passed the Senate, and it went to the Assembly, and it failed on the last day of passage. But the good news is that before the bill was voted on, we got an amendment made where they removed carbon black from the list of toxic chemicals. So that was a huge success on our part. It required tremendous effort on the part of us, our staff. We had to meet with legislators. We had to meet with staff people. We had to write letters. Our members were integral to this. So we had an action alert where we got our members to write letters to their representatives in New York State. Yeah. And we got letters submitted. So we had a full court press, worked with lobbyists, worked with coalitions. We spent tremendous amount of resources. It wasn't like, oh, we just sent a letter. We had to break through all of the noise that was put up by those who were in favor of this. And some of the meetings we had with the legislative staff didn't go very well. They were not convinced. But other staff were very well convinced and understood the significance, because essentially what it meant to New York State was that you really couldn't sell anything in a package. And that would be pretty devastating to their economy. So we were very, very engaged in that process, and we're good. I'm glad to report this again The bill didn't pass. Before they voted on the final version, it was removed. Now, where do we stand? New Jersey has similar legislation that was introduced and is pending. So we're doing the same thing in New Jersey right now. They're out until Labor Day. So we've had a little bit of a break over the summer, but we've submitted our letters of opposition. We've had meetings. We're involved in coalitions. We're repeating the same process in New Jersey. And then earlier this year, Vermont had that same proposed language in it. And the bill just died on its own. So we didn't get engaged in Vermont. The consensus was to let that ride. And if you didn't bring attention to it, it would probably die, and the bill died. So New Jersey, the bill is still active. The legislative session doesn't end until next year. So come beginning of September, we're going to be back in the trenches pushing against the ban on carbon black. And so the good news is we won in New York. That was significant. That's going to count a lot in New Jersey, but there's still a bill that's pending in New Jersey that we're in opposition to.
Okay. All right. Well,
so
let's
Cassie,
take a moment to celebrate the win in New York, Terry. I mean, we got to get
definitely
out there. Good job.
Cassie, Gary's making it sound like you guys don't just show up and do a trade show and go home.
No,
not from the association side, man. We're, at least in our area, it has just been a crazy year. We talked in March, and since March, it's just not slowed down with other proposals, other issues. I mean, the focus on chemicals is crazy right now. And in Maine, for example, Maine has, with their EPR legislation, they have a list of toxic chemicals that they want people to certify are not going to appear in their packaging. And unfortunately, some of those chemicals are used in inks that are used in packaging. And so we have we have to the end of August to make our point with the Maine DEP. So it's crazy what's going on. But back ERP, just to give the audience a background, EPR, sorry. Extended producer responsibility. Extended producer responsibility is a concept that basically says if I'm going to put a product into the marketplace and it's going to be in a package, I'm going to have to pay a fee to address the recyclability, the collection and recycling of that package. And so extended producer responsibility is pretty common throughout the world. And it's relatively new to us here in the US, starting a couple of years back. So EPR has been around for quite some time on different products. So packaging and printed products, it's new. So here in the United States, we have 5 states that have passed EPR legislation. In Minnesota being the latest one this year that passed EPR. The Minnesota legislation covers packaging and printed matter. So EPR is growing in its popularity. Essentially, it creates a system by if you are putting a product in the marketplace, you're going to have to pay a fee for the package. And the fee is going to be based on the recyclability. Is it something that's readily recyclable or less readily recyclable? So there's going to be a whole fee structure. None of the states yet have kicked in their fees, but we know that from looking in Canada, which has had these in place for quite some time, the fees can be quite expensive. And so we're concerned about the impact that it's going to have on print, because it could drive folks to more digital communication instead of print communication. And so I think your primary audience here is dealing with apparel, and you might be saying, oh, well, hey, I didn't hear the word apparel in that conversation. I heard packaging and print. Yeah. But let me tell you right now in California, there's legislation that's pending that's going to create an EPR program for apparel and textiles. In Canada is now in the process. They call it consultation. Basically, it's a proposal, but they floated a 3-part proposal in Canada. One is to create an EPR program. The second is to deal with durability, because there's concerns with apparel and durability, because a lot of people have maybe have clothing that isn't as well made and it doesn't last as long, and you have to discard it. And the third part is microplastics, which is something we didn't really talk about in March. But depending upon the type of fiber that's in your apparel, it can generate a lot of microplastics. And microplastics is getting a lot of attention with respect to the NGO community. They're finding microplastics everywhere. And so the concern is, what are microplastics doing to us? They're finding them in our body. they're finding in the environment. What are they doing? So Canada is looking at how do we address microplastics in this bigger package. The California legislation is just for recycling and collection, and Canada is looking at all three because all three of those issues are getting a lot of attention, as well as the EU. So I think it's inevitable. We're going to see EPR for apparel and textiles here in the US. It's just a matter of not if, I think it's when. And we'll see an expansion of the ones on packaging and printing.
Yeah. So Gary, and I want to actually throw this to Cassie here because, yeah, you talked about going back to carbon black. In fact, like, okay, packaging, right? Like sometimes I think as apparel people, we go, oh, okay, well that's their challenge. But again, we're part of this bigger, like you said, verticals that we're part of this bigger umbrella, right? Like Cassie, when you're talking to people in the apparel world, right? What are their concerns with this pending legislation, and like why should they be on board with making sure that we're working? You guys are obviously leading the charge. So what we got to do to kind of be part of that team to make sure that we understand realities, not just what sounds good in a political realm.
Right. Well, and I found myself thinking when Gary was talking is I have two thoughts to that question. A, as Gary mentioned, there's a lot of noise around this. Yeah. So the biggest thing you have to realize is because there's so much noise, particularly political noise, that's where like we as the Alliance comes in, because there's a lot of research that has to be done by people who know what they're talking about, the data points, things like that. As an apparel decorator, I'm just going to float this out there. It's likely you don't have time to do your own research into this. Maybe you do. Maybe like that's your fun project at the end of the night and you're like, I'm going to research carbon black and understand this, right? But like you have to understand, dig through the noise and find out what's actually happening and understand, okay, this is what the legislation looks like. These are the data points that support or, refute it, whatever. And Gary and team provide that. So that's my first thing is just pay attention to what's happening. Simply start that way, right? Pay attention, dig through the noise. But my second thought is how many decorators out there, think to yourself, are doing fulfillment and packaging and doing this sort of thing? Like maybe you're working with a contract customer where they want you to drop ship everything. Now you are employing lots of different packaging options. There might be bags, there might be cardboard boxes, there might, whatever the packaging looks like that you're putting your apparel in, so to think that this doesn't affect you is crazy. But you have to think about like all of the things you're doing. You as a decorator, you're not just printing a shirt, you're also packaging stuff, you're shipping it out, you're doing all these things. And if you are in the States or working with customers in the States, things like that, like this does impact you in one way or another. I mean, the carbon black thing, but also beyond. If there are EPR laws, those will affect you too, because, and Gary talks about this in an article that I interviewed him for, is you might think you're not the person putting this out in the environment, so you're not held responsible. You might be. And again, look through the noise. Gary, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail right in the head with your second point, because you say, what's the connection between apparel and packaging? Well, I'm not making packaging, but you're putting your stuff in packages, right? And the other issue is, could you be considered what's called a producer? That's the term they use in the legislation. A producer is the person that has to pay the fee. So if you're printing your own garments and you're selling your own garments in a retail location, or you're going to drop ship them into a state, guess what? You could be a pro. I mean, you could be a producer and have to join what's called a producer responsibility organization and pay a fee, a pro. So you can actually be a producer. Most printers are not going to be producers unless you have some web to print or web to commerce type situation where you're actually producing it, because you are now, and if you have licenses to print, say for sportswear or something, and you have that license, then you can also be potentially considered a producer under the EPR, under the packaging EPRs that are in place now. And you may or may not be a producer under the pending ones coming for textiles and apparel.
Okay.
You know, I teach screen printing classes, as you guys know, and 2 weeks ago I was in Chicago. A week from now, I'm going to be teaching a class here in Phoenix, and one of the things we talk about is put your name on the box, print that box yourself, and if it says Gildan, print right over the top of it. So I guess I've been out there telling people you should be producers, and without realizing it.
Yep. Right, because the EPR legislation's changing a lot of the ways that we're going to be viewing packaging and things that go into packaging, for sure. Especially like with the toxic chemicals and things like that they're identifying. You know, you got to know what's in it. You know, what's going into that package that I'm sending out.
Okay.
Well, so Cassie, is there anything specifically with these EPR laws that we need to know about for textiles and apparel beyond what we've already talked about?
Yeah, I mean, I think Gary kind of already really alluded to it. Is like we typically see California be the leader in these types of things in the US. They're usually the state that tends to pass the laws and the regulations ahead of everybody else. And so, you know, pay attention to those. But as Gary said, while there might not be an actual law or legislative effort in your specific state, doesn't mean there won't be one probably pretty soon. And especially with textiles and apparel and it coming to the recyclability of those and getting rid of them. I was just reading that this is sort of on the wayside, but sort of not. I was just reading an article this morning about some new laws addressing these de minimis. You know, people are bypassing, companies like Shein, Temu are bypassing shipping laws so that they can get cheap stuff into the US, which means consumers are buying them, which means they're throwing them away quicker, blah, blah, blah. So I think we're going to see an acceleration of these types of EPR laws happening in more states. Even in Colorado, where I'm located at, earlier this year, a law was passed about what you can actually like use in your textiles, and then you have to label that. So we're seeing a lot of it, just big picture overall. Okay, it's governing chemicals, it's governing recyclability, it's governing producers, all of this stuff. So even if it's not now, I agree with Gary, it's going to happen. It's inevitable. So again, cut through the noise, pay attention. I mean, just that's the simple starting point. Just pay attention because it's probably going to happen.
Yeah. Go ahead, Gary.
No, I was going to say that exactly. I would say the only thing I would add to that is if you are involved in one of the 5 states that have an EPR legislation already that they're working on, you may or may not have to register as a producer, because one of the requirements is you have to register as a producer, and then you have to share very specific information about the types of packaging that you're putting into that marketplace, the marketplace being the state boundary. So anything being shipped into those states, you may be subject to those requirements and have to pay a fee.
Gotcha.
Well, you know, Gary, when you were talking about New York and then New Jersey and then Vermont, I'm sitting here waiting. I'm thinking California's got to be in the mix here somewhere.
Well, California is one of the 5 states that already have packaging EPR that's passed. Okay. You have California, you have Maine, Colorado, Minnesota, and I believe it's Oregon. Oregon are the 5 that have it passed, and it's being considered probably in about another 10 states or so. I expect next year, New York's going to pass something. There's no doubt in my mind. New York is going to pass something. They've been at it for a couple of years on extended producer responsibility. So I expect that to happen. I expect New Jersey is going to pass something on EPR. There's a lot of pressure there to pass something. So I think we're going to have some more states that are joining that list of 5. And I think eventually what we'll see, and we're starting to see a little bit at the federal level, the congressional level. See, once you get enough states passing laws, and then they're all different. They have different definitions, different thresholds. There's going to be a hue and a cry to have standardization across the country. Mm-hmm. So, but the problem is, you know, if something gets passed by the federal Congress, does that supersede the state law? You know, we have states' rights. So that makes it very, very sticky. if you have the feds doing something on top of what the states are doing. So that's something I see ultimately also occurring, maybe not next year or the year after, but when you get enough states passing, especially the big states, you get Illinois, New York, California, the big hitters, in essence, you're creating almost a nationwide type program, but you have varying requirements. So it's going to be challenging to understand. And then you have to pay fees to each state, So think about that cost. That hasn't hit anybody yet, but that cost is coming. So.
Okay. So we've been talking a lot about, all these kind of pending things and things that are, obviously in the works. Like I said, it's going to happen. So we need to be aware of that. OSHA in general, I've been hearing a lot more people saying, hey, more, just more OSHA people showing up. And I don't know,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's just kind of because I'm hearing it more, but whatever, like as decorators, how do we make sure that, we're practicing, we're compliant? And, I think as decorators, we also like to be leaders where we can, right? How can we also say what's best practices, right? I know you guys, specifically you, Gary, do a lot of work in this area too. So can you just talk to us kind of more broadly about OSHA?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And the first thing I want to say, OSHA is a 4-letter word. And it can generate other 4-letter words. Let me tell you.
Yes.
So anyhow, no, OSHA really, I'm not sure I can put my thumb on it, but there is a tremendous focus on the apparel decoration segment of our industry. I've gotten more calls from members, and I've gotten, as a result of the webinar, we've gotten people that have become members because they got inspected by OSHA. And OSHA is out there, and I don't know if it's they've discovered apparel decoration or if it's what's driving there's usually typical common drivers to why you get an OSHA inspection. One is our industry, unfortunately, is considered a high hazard industry for amputation. So that puts us at the top of a lot of inspection lists. Employee complaints. If you discipline an employee, a lot of times they'll pick up the phone and call OSHA. And so that can generate inspections. And then there's the self-reporting requirement. If you have an injury that happens in your facility, and if that injury requires treatment, that treatment requires hospitalization, you have to report to OSHA within 24 hours of that. If you have an amputation, you have to report within 24 hours. And if you have a person that loses an eye, that you have to report that in 24 hours. And if there's a fatality, that has to be reported in 8 hours. In fact, there was just a fatality at a printing operation this week, and it appears that it was not work related, which is good. But they still, the company, even if it isn't work related, you have to report that fatality. It appears that it was a forklift operator, had a heart attack, fell out of the truck and was struck. But so anyhow, a very tragic incident. So OSHA is out there. We just recently, literally within the past week, I was sharing with Cassie, we helped a member who was inspected. They were cited. Their proposed penalty was $50,000. It's an operation that has about, I think, 33 employees. So, a bigger, but not huge, in terms of the scale, but a bigger. And so they were cited, and we were able to help them. We got some of the citations were rescinded. Some of them were, I would say, minor in nature. For example, they didn't have a fire extinguisher that was hung, and OSHA has a rule that you have to hang all fire extinguishers between 36 and 48 inches. And but they weren't doing annual fire extinguisher training, so that led to that penalty, which we got reduced. But we got the total penalty reduced down to about $17,000, so 66% reduction. But there was a lot of the things that we're seeing commonly. Machine guarding and lockout tagout are going to get you big fines because of the amputation issue. And so we were able to work through the machine guarding requirements very, very, very well. We got that reduced to zero. They still had to address machine guarding, but the penalty reduced to zero. But lockout tagout requires a written program, requires training. So In this particular instance, they were, and this may be common practice with screen reclamation, but in this particular instance, they were giving out respirators to their employees and having employees wear respirators, like the cartridge respirators. So as soon as you do that, that requires a full-blown written program from OSHA. It requires you to do training, it requires you to do medical fit testing. When you have someone that puts a restrictive respirator on their face, they have to be able to medically be able to withstand that, because people have different conditions that you're not aware of. Well, they have to be evaluated by a healthcare professional that it's not going to cause any adverse impact, or they can't have that position. You know, so when you put those, now if you give them a dust mask on a voluntary basis, that's just the easy thing. That's just signing off on a form, Appendix D of the standard. But a full-blown respirator requires a full-blown respirator program. So that was one of the requirements that were in there. So there was some other things that were in there that we helped walk through. I would also say too, methylene chloride. I know we've talked about this. Methylene chloride. Methylene chloride is one of those chemicals that has gotten a lot of attention. In fact, EPA is now banned methylene chloride. So there's a lawsuit that was filed challenging EPA's rule. But by April of 2026, which seems like it's a pretty far off time, methylene chloride is going to be banned. In other words, you can't get it. Methylene chloride is in 90% of all the spot removers that are used in apparel decoration. It's a wonderful chemical when it comes to spot removers. However, it has many concerns with respect to potential toxicity. But regardless of the EPA ban, understand OSHA's regulation on methylene chloride is that if you have it and you're using it in your facility, you must test your employees for exposure. No ifs, ands, or buts. And so a lot of apparel decorators don't know that. They're not doing it. And that's a very common citation we're seeing as part of this mix of this focus on apparel decoration by OSHA. So methylene chloride is EPA came out pretty strong and said, we think it's a carcinogenic material. OSHA came this close to saying it, but they treated it as a carcinogenic material, which mandates the exposure testing. Like you have to have it. If you don't do the exposure evaluation, you're subject to a rather significant penalty, and that penalty could be as much as $15,000, $16,000. So depending upon the size of your operation, I call it a sliding scale, although they would never officially admit that. But I've seen the same violation at smaller printing companies result in a smaller penalty. Same violation at a larger company gets a maximum. So depending on where you're at, there's like an ability to pay that's in there, but they're going to hit you with it. You're going to get it. Yeah.
Well, as a plant manager in the past, I have been the victim of the unpleasant termination phone call to OSHA, but no fines. So I've had the best.
Well, see what happens in that case, Terry, as long as the person who's making the complaint gives them their name and identifies, OSHA by law must act on that complaint. And so they will do one of two things. They will either send a letter or they will send an inspector, but they have to respond. As long as that person is willing to identify themselves. OSHA, now when OSHA comes out and does an inspection, they don't tell you who that person is. Their identity is protected because of confidentiality. They just say we had an employee complaint, and typically the employee complaint will draw a roadmap. Now, in a lot of instances, what is perceived as a violation isn't a violation, but it's like the camel getting into the tent. Once the nose is in, they're there. And so once OSHA's in your facility, anything that they see, they can cite you. So it doesn't have to be narrowed down to the list of the litany of complaints that an ex-employee or a disgruntled employee may have raised. So as they're walking through your facility, if they see something, then they can cite it. And by law, they're supposed to cite that as part of it. So once they're in there, so you're better off, if you're better off in any of these situations, you're better off getting a letter, because then you can control the response, because it's a written response. And based on the nature of the written response, OSHA will then decide whether to send an inspector. But unfortunately, going back to what I said originally, because we're a high hazard industry for amputations, if the complaint involves equipment, they're going to send an inspector. During COVID, at the height of COVID, OSHA was afraid to send out inspectors, so we got a lot of letters. And so that made it easier to respond. But now that COVID's behind us, they usually send an inspector to printing operations, which I think is what's generating some of these rather high penalties in terms of the proposed penalty. But I do, since we have everyone's attention, I do urge everyone, if you are in that situation and you have an inspection, you get a citation, you definitely want to contest the citation. Reach out to us. We can help you. Reach out to your resources. You definitely want to contest the citation because you will probably get a penalty reduction associated with it. It may not be significant. OSHA is only going to give you at most 30. So the fact that we hit 66 was huge. So we had a lot of good points in terms of what OSHA was perceiving as a violation really wasn't a violation. So, and that's important to understand too. The inspectors aren't experts. They're not experts on printing. They're not experts on any industry. You know, they could be in a foundry the day before, and then they're going to a printing shop. So, but they know their regs, but it's the application of those regulations to our situation. So,
yeah, okay. Wow,
well,
good information.
I did have the inspection, but you know, I didn't get any fines, so I was
good.
I counted that good to go.
Yeah, for sure.
So
well,
Cassie,
yeah.
So small, medium apparel businesses. Let's jump over to sustainability. How can those businesses start implementing sustainability practices without overwhelming themselves and overwhelming their operations? Give us some tips.
Oh man, well, I've kind of talked about this a couple times.
You have 2 minutes.
Okay, let's go. Just a couple things is pay attention to what you're purchasing. Don't over purchase. I think we've all talked about this since COVID. You don't need to be purchasing, 5,000 t-shirts, hoping you're going to sell those in the next day. I mean, I know that's kind of a silly example, but don't over purchase. We all have these print-on-demand technologies available to us, shipping, things like that. So paying attention to your inventory, paying attention to what you're purchasing. Are you buying some of, these textiles that are releasing microplastics or things like that? Like those are some little things you can do, focusing on, am I buying something with 100% cotton? Is this recyclable? Those are some things. Obviously, the little things, this goes without saying, energy efficient light bulbs, energy efficient like toilets and sinks and things like that. Those are the easy ones, right? Like any shop, even if you're a one-man shop, can easily do those little things, right? If you're starting to think bigger picture, the packaging thing comes back up. Are you reusing your packaging? Or if you can't reuse it, are you recycling it? There's this really cool program that I use called Ridwell that will take all of the more difficult to recycle plastics that our family produces, and they take care of it on their end. So is there a program in your area that will help you with that? Those are things to pay attention to. And by the way, it's super cheap. It's like $18 a month. So it's like, those are like the little things you can look into. If you're starting to get bigger and you really want to talk about the sustainability thing, working with programs that can help you, if you have leftover inks and chemicals, how are you disposing of those properly and safely, making sure they're not getting washed back into the environment, things like that. Again, bigger, a lot of people talk about transfers and stuff like that. What are you doing with all of your leftover transfer sheets? And are you working with companies that can help you? Because they do exist. There are companies out there who can help take all of those leftover, supplies that you're using and either recycle or repurpose them. So it requires some legwork, guys. But if we're going to change the industry, you have to put the effort in. We have to. So you have to at least try.
Yeah. I mean, with the onslaught of direct-to-film technology, right? And now we've got this film that, great, it's awesome, it works as that carrier, but yeah, you've got a plastic here that, what do you do with that, right? Paper is a little bit easier to recycle, right? So Gary, what do you guys, anything you're seeing on that end? I mean, obviously we've used films for a while, but this is really kind of new for the apparel space for sure.
Yeah, film is a challenge. Let me tell you, across the board, film, regardless of its application, is a recycling challenge. Now, there is a great outlet for film, and it's Trex and the guys that make plastic lumber, but they can only take so much, right? So there are collection systems set up for that. Film remains a challenge for sure. Now there is some work going on to make film easier to separate and easier to recycle, but right now film is not desired, like for your curbside collection, because it gums up the equipment. And so film is really, it is a challenge. In terms of what Cassie said, for recycling, I'm a big believer in walking your process backwards. You start at what you're throwing away, and you work your way forward, instead of, we always think, in terms of our workflow, but if we walk our process backwards and we start asking why are we generating this waste? Why are we creating this waste? And then what can we do with it? That's very revealing in terms of a starting point with respect to your to looking at your operation. And probably the other thing I would add to what Cassie said is that I know people don't like to hear this word so much, but it's called metrics. But you need to know your metrics. You need to know, what are you generating? How much solid waste do you generate? And how much waste materials you're generating? What's your carbon footprint? The key metrics. How much water are you consuming? What's your wastewater volume? Can I reduce my wastewater? Can I reduce my water consumption? Can I look at my emissions to the air? Can I reduce my VOC emissions? Can I reduce my air toxic emissions? So having metrics, I think, is critical, because it allows you to tell your story. You can say, hey, like Cassie said, you can start looking at energy efficiency activities. And so I've reduced my energy, but unless you knew where you started, how do you know what you've done, what you've accomplished? So you need your baseline, you need to know, and as you put measures in place, then you want to claim that and start educating and talking to the term of stakeholders, your customers, your employees. You want dashboards of metrics. And I truly firmly believe metrics are the heart of any sustainability program, because it's going to give you that measurement of activity and result of that activity. So
A quick point, sorry, to just add to that, is you're a business owner, you're already tracking metrics anyway. You should be tracking like your profits, you should be tracking like your costs, your ROIs, you're tracking metrics anyway. Just add this to it. You already know how to do data collection, hopefully. And so just add it. That is an easy add, I think.
You start with some of the easy ones, but as you get more refined and you get more into it, you can start breaking it on into more finite. But starting with energy consumption, starting with solid waste generation, period. But then you could break that down into the recyclable, non-recyclable type scenario, and then further down, into fiber, non-fiber, etc. So as you get more comfortable with it, but start big and work your way down.
Well, it sounds like just start, huh?
Absolutely.
Amy Krulowitz has a question here. She says, how do we find the companies who reclaim DTF films?
I'll let Gary speak to this as well, but I will say there are only a very small number, very, very small number who I've heard do this, and they have limits on how much they will take. They also have sort of these, I hate using the word qualification, but it depends how much DTF film you actually have used and are going to turn in. So if you're a smaller shop and you don't have quote unquote enough, they may not be willing to work with you, but it truly starts down with a Google search. Like I said, I've only heard of a couple in the country that do it, and they're very limited on what they will take, at least at this stage. And Gary, I don't know if you've heard.
Yeah, no, there's no nationwide database. I've been trying to push my colleagues at the Plastics Industry Association to build out some databases, because it would be really good to have resources like this so that you can easily find outlets for these materials. So the only other thing I'd suggest that to add on what Cassie said is get back to your supplier and vendor, because they, some of them, some suppliers, some vendors in the, and I'm not sure about DTF, so that I'll caveat that, but in the substrate area will take back and recycle material. So I would start there to see, are they prepared to do that, first of all, and secondly, have they formed any partnerships with folks that could take the material? Have they identified partnerships? Because there's a lot of pressure right now on a lot of these non-recyclable or hard to recycle materials, and the pressure is going to continue to build. So I would keep asking the question.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the stuff comes from overseas and in China at this point, from my understanding of it. So that makes it a little bit more challenging. But absolutely, the pressure's on them. And I think as consumers, we need to continue to put the pressure on as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. So Jeremy says, go Cassie. So just double high five there. I love it. Okay. So I know you don't throw anything at me, you guys. Printing United Expo's only a couple weeks away. I know that's it. You guys have been working your tails off, getting ready for this. As Terry said, it's not the only thing that you do, obviously, but
who knew?
Who knew? Right?
Yeah.
So obviously, okay, there's going to be a lot of printing going on, a lot of showing off our stuff that's not really going anywhere, right? A lot of T-shirts are probably going to be made, excess garments, things like that. The apparel zone, Cassie, you talked about that last week. I mean, it's a hands-on opportunity, right? Things are going to be happening there. So, how are you guys addressing any of that? Cassie, let's just start with you with the apparel zone, and Gary, if you've got anything to add about overall picture. But we're obviously interested in the apparel zone.
Yeah. Okay. So two points. One on the OSHA point, Gary is going to be speaking in the apparel zone at the Apparel Live Theater on Tuesday, September 10th at 2 p.m. on OSHA. He's also doing OSHA as part of the general sessions as well. So you're going to get plenty of opportunity to hear Gary speak on the safety side. Now, in terms of like the sustainability and any sort of excess waste, it's a challenge. I'm not going to lie, because if you look at the entire apparel, outside the apparel zone, all of the apparel exhibitors as a whole, there's a lot of garments being generated, right? The hope is that most people take them home and either wear them, reuse them, recycle, whatever. In the apparel zone specifically, we are working with a local Las Vegas nonprofit to donate any of the excess garments from the apparel zone specifically. I will say the details are still in the works. It's taking a huge lift. I am hopeful, and I am going to work very, very hard to make this come to fruition. At this stage, it's not 100% confirmed, but I will say the sponsors are really excited to be a part of this. So, the tentative plan is to reuse the boxes that they bring the blanks in and, hold on to those, store them during the expo, and then repackage up anything that's excess, has been already printed, and work with this local nonprofit to donate them. That's the goal. And I really want to make this initiative come to life. So fingers crossed that this is what happens with some of the excess garments, because there are ways that we can reuse these. Now, I will say, for the record, there are a lot of exhibitors who are already doing similar programs like this. A lot of them will either ship their excess garments to the next show to reuse, or they will work with nonprofits that are near and dear to them or local to their actual headquarters to donate the garments. So there are companies that will just package everything up that's left over and ship direct to the nonprofit of their choice. So the change is already happening. We're helping spearhead it. There are a lot of exhibitors that are helping spearhead it. And, we will slowly implement some change.
Something that and Epson and Equipment Zone are sharing the DTG space there on the apparel zone, and we actually had this conversation, and one of the things that we determined was let's do a graphic that the person that we hand it to wants to keep it, wants to go home and wear it, and so. And how easy it is to empty your bag and start throwing things away. Oh, I'm never going to wear this. Cassie, when you were on before, and I said I caught the Arizona Cardinals T-shirt, from the T-shirt gun at the Cardinals game. I'm never going to wear that shirt, but But so we made a conscious effort to let's do a couple of graphics that the person's going to say, yeah, I want to take this home. I want to wear this shirt. So
Nice.
What an easy thing to do. Look at a simple conscious decision. I love that, Terry. I love it.
Yeah.
Let's make them sustainability oriented.
There you go. Love it.
Just to add with Cassie, thank you so much for the plug on the presentations on OSHA. We have Sarah Osorio who works with me. She's doing a presentation on sustainability, so you might want to put that in your calendar in the education session. But we're going to be at our booth at Printing United Alliance's booth, which is going to be near registration. And so me, Sarah, Adrian Harrison, who's subject matter expert on HR related issues, and Steph Buca, who's our subject matter expert on the government affairs side of it. We're all going to be available to answer questions. So if you're near the booth, feel free to stop by. Ideally, we want you to be a member, right? Because if you are a member, we have a lot of resources for sustainability. We have a lot of resources for OSHA. We have written program templates. We have a guide to OSHA, basically, what OSHA regulations apply to me. So we have a lot of resources that we have available to our members. So we obviously want you to become a member because then you can access this all the time. But we're going to be there at the show. So if you have questions, if you can take a break from your schedule, and if you want to stop by, we'll be more than happy to help answer your questions for you. So.
Well, I think this whole program, this whole show today should encourage people to become members as well. I mean, there's so many resources, and I joke about just doing the trade show, but there's so many resources there that people should be taking advantage of.
Yeah, 100%. All right. So, let's close out with that. Yeah, this has been amazing. We're excited to get to see you guys, and I'm sure we'll have more questions for you there at the show. So, Gary, we'll try to not take up all of your time, but where can people sign up? Again, we're a couple weeks away here, so give us the dates. Where can people sign up? Where we're going to be able to meet people in Las Vegas there? Cassie,
I was going to say, if you look
Gary.
at the link that Eric just shared, printingunited.com, you click on register, you click on attend. That's the easiest way. Just click right on it. You'll fill out a quick registration form. If you've attended in the past, it might have your information saved. That's the quickest way to do it. September 10th through 12th in Vegas.
Yeah. That's what I was going to mention, the dates. Yeah, well, it'll be hot. It's going to be hot, but it'll be good. I think we have the latest report I heard is that we have, I think, over 800 exhibitors. I think it's going to be a great show. So you definitely want to come because there's going to be a lot of new technology. There's going to be a lot of new things, and it's a community. It's the way it's broken up is everyone has their different community areas. So encourage everyone in the industry affiliated with it to come to the show. Yeah, hot or not, it's inside, so it's air conditioned. All good.
That's true. Vegas is the same temperature as Phoenix, so I'm all good.
Yeah, you're accustomed to that, so
yeah. Awesome. Hey, you guys, thank you so much. What a wonderful conversation. Thank you for just being on the forefront of all this too, and making sure that we're aware. I think a lot of times, again, maybe this has just been my perspective, but we kind of go, that doesn't really affect me. But the reality is it does, and it will if you're not careful. And so having the knowledge and education, like Cassie said, looking through the noise, Gary, you mentioned that same thing, just be aware. And you guys are making sure that we stay aware. So we appreciate you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for having me back. So that's twice in a year. I don't know if that's certainly a record for me, but thank you for well, I've really enjoyed both working with you guys on both of the podcasts. So
fantastic. Nice. And we will certainly twice for Cassie in 8 days, but awesome. We will certainly see you guys in Vegas here just around the corner.
Absolutely.
All right. Have a good one, guys. We'll see you there in Vegas.
Okay.
Awesome.
Awesome. A lot of great,
really good information there. So good. Hey, Terry, couple things. So we brought up a couple of, Gary mentioned the 4-letter word, OSHA, but I don't know if you guys heard the other 4-letter word that I heard in that conversation that Cassie shared, TIMU. So we covered a couple of 4-letter words here this show. Ramona had a good thought for you here, Terry, as you guys are printing these items. She said, just a thought. you want them to go home and be used. Make sure you're printing sizes that match the people to take them home. Probably not. I don't know. Yeah, I don't wear.
Interestingly enough, in the past, Aaron, we would print a large or an extra large to keep people from saying, "Hey, can I get that in small?" But in the apparel zone, we are in fact having a range of sizes in our
awesome.
booth there. So
good. Well,
so good idea, and thanks for suggesting that. And we are doing that exactly.
Yeah,
so.
Yep. And Dan, I saw your comment about the DTF and the powder stuff. I personally don't know anything else about that, so probably worth talking to some folks there. Just reach out to Printing United and see if they have any other. Just make sure you remember and reach out and talk to those folks. Terry,
I do know that the DTF powder that at least the equipment zone sells is OECO-Tex certified. So it is safe, and that's a good point too, Dan, because it made me think about the black ink. When it's actually made into an ink, it's no longer a powder, and it's therefore safe. I guess it would be the same thing with the adhesive powder. Once it's applied to a garment, it's no longer a powder. So I guess that would be safe as well. But I am no expert, nor do I play one on this podcast.
And you did not stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. Is that an old reference too now? I think so.
Yeah, you're dating yourself too.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, Terry, what do you got coming up here?
Okay, my complete screen printing business course. I'm going to be at Workhorse Products in about a week, August 24th through 25th. I think there's a couple of slots still left up for that class. I'll be in Chicago at Atlas Screen Supply, October 12th through 13th. Here's a repeat. August 29th at 1 o'clock Eastern, Jay Bassell and I are going to be doing a free Graphics Pro webinar called DTG and DTF Printing, Making Informed Decisions. And you think, wait, weren't you doing that yesterday? We were, but there were some technical difficulties. And it wasn't me and Jay this time. It was on the other end, just could not get us on the air. So the 168 people that were there waiting, hopefully they'll sign back in 2 weeks. And we're going to be doing that presentation on Thursday, the 29th. Okay. Obviously at Printing United, I'll be in the Equipment Zone booth. And again, that's September 10th through 12th. Aaron and I are going to be doing the show here on Tuesday morning over in the Apparel Zone. Yep. And I'm going to be speaking in the Apparel Zone a couple of times as well. I guess I should get those listed. And I'll be talking DTG and DTF printing at the Impressions Expo in Fort Worth, October 24th through 26th. Aaron, are you going to be in Fort Worth? Did I ask you that?
I'm not actually this time around. So, but I'll have FOMO, so it'll be okay.
Okay. And you can find the rest of all my upcoming events at terrycombs.com. How about you, Aaron?
Check that stuff out. Hey, let me share mainly the Printing United thing first is what's coming up next for me, being a couple of things I got going on there. But before I get too far away from it, Dan, your comment there about the DTF and the powder stuff. Cassie did private message us and say, hey, just tell Dan to reach out so you can reach out to Cassie through Apparelist or find Gary through Printing United. And I know she sent this through our private message, but I'm going to share it anyhow because that's what I do. She says, tell Dan to reach out to us about the powder topic. It's a doozy. And Gary and I have talked about it a lot. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Cassie, we have to book you for another show to come back and talk about that.
Yeah.
Because that's a huge
well,
subject.
I mean, Gary said twice in 1 year, and I say let's make it 3 times in 1 year.
Let's
right?
do it.
So,
let's do it. Have them in.
Love it. All right. So as I mentioned, Printing United Expo coming up here. Really excited about the show in general, for sure. I actually get to be a part of, they're doing a really cool media day activation this time around compared to your traditional, here's a room, me as an exhibitor, I'm going to tell you, in my 30-minute presentation how awesome we are. They're actually doing a media day, and I get to be involved in that as a media member, and also I'm going to be helping kind of coordinate, facilitate, be the MC. So I'm really excited about that. So I will be in the day before. I'm trying to find a good Las Vegas 50s style outfit. So if anybody has any suggestions for me, I would be open to that. I kind of was thinking like a 70s high roller looks, 50s, 60s, 70s high roller look. I don't know. We'll see. So
Remember Mike Presner going as Fat Elvis one year to the show.
Maybe I could do that. I don't know. There we go. Okay.
Walking around with a half-eaten cheeseburger.
But I also get to present a couple of topics there as part of the education program. So my first session will be on September 10th at 2 p.m. local time, and I will be talking targeted success, how to find your ideal customer, and just really honing in on a niche and why that doesn't limit you from who you're going to do business with and how we're going to do that. So I'm really looking forward to sharing that topic. And then the next day on September 11th at 1 o'clock local time, I will be talking about AI marketing mastery, how to leverage ChatGPT and large language models for business growth. Not about design. I leave that to Dane Clement, but really just about using it as a tool to help our marketing and building our ideal customer profile and all sorts of cool things. I probably use AI a little more than I maybe should. Maybe I'm becoming a little too reliant on it. But just the other day, Terry, I took a picture of our open refrigerator door and I asked ChatGPT to tell me what to make for dinner. And it actually had some decent ideas. So
didn't pop up and give you the Pizza Hut phone number.
Yeah. I probably should have, but no, we had some things in there. We had a lot of eggs in our refrigerator, so it had a lot of egg recipes. But
I love it.
Anyhow. And then the other thing I wanted to remind folks of, and I've talked about it before, but just to make sure people have put this on their calendar, October 10th through the 12th. My Fundamentals Live program that we did back in June, we are back, and it's going to be better than ever. It's time that you transform your business. I've watched way too many people struggle, and so that's why I'm shouting this from the mountaintops, because I know with this structure, I've seen it. In fact, we're seeing it from the folks in June, just how they've really kind of re-looked and thought differently about their business. So the idea is we turn your business from I have to do this into I get to do this. So I don't want to watch people work so hard and have all their time stolen from them and then dealing with, not getting the value that they're worth. So we want to give you guys a blueprint and do it in a really transformative experience, as opposed to, hey, me preaching at you. It's an experience. And you come together and you're going to have a business that truly fulfills you once you leave on the 12th of October. I have seen the clarity, confidence, and fulfillment that this program brings. So I know I need to turn my volume up to 10. So if you keep hearing about it from me, that means that, and if it starts to kind of tingle a little bit, sign up. We're only going to have 10 seats available at this, because we realize that we need to make this a very intimate experience for people to get the transformation that they deserve. If you like this idea of a heart-centered business and you want to talk to more people and be involved in a community that is about that and having a more fulfilling, passion-filled business, then you should definitely check out our Facebook group. It's osg.link/group. And lots of great perspective questions, discussions about more than just surface level stuff. But we also, not that this is surface level, but whatever you need, right? It's we call it the Entrepreneur Success Hub. We've actually just renamed it to make sure we meet people where they're at. And so we were talking about web stores in there the other day and how to do some of that stuff. And so whatever people need, we talk about it. And it's really a great group to be a part of. So head over there, check that out. All right, Terry. Let me share Eric's, and then we can bring him in for the secret sauce. I know we're well into bonus time, but some great information today. So Eric has got his take-up program this afternoon. It's episode 199. So drum roll, almost to 200. That's really awesome. And today is all about self-directed projects. This is part 2. And he's learning like us, Terry. We just do series and you make it stretch out a little bit, right? But what to digitize and why, how you can get more directed, refined experiences that tests the specific tools, materials, and techniques you want to learn. self-directed projects. So we're going to talk about the types of art you should take on and what Eric looks for in a skill sharpening project. So really cool stuff. Eric got to the place where he's at by doing this exact thing. So come learn how he does that. So check out ericcampbell.com, and it's the take up link at the top, and you'll get more information. Plus you can see those previous 199 episodes and the hundreds more to come. All right. So I think I covered that. Eric, are you ready to bring yourself to the other side of the screen here? Whenever you're ready, go for it.
Hey folks, I'm here with the Secret Sauce today, and it is all about when we should search for stock fonts and use stock fonts for machine embroidery. The thing is, if there is a single solitary time waster I've seen plague the embroidery digitizing community, it is the endless search for fonts. Whether tracking down a true or an open type original or looking for a pre-digitized version of a font seen in someone's art or in someone's previous embroidery, decorators are consistently cursed with the endless search for just the right version of the typeface in question. The truth is, we're often overly consumed with the finding of fonts. And the fact is, it's maximum effort with minimum results. The sad truth is, in many cases, this entire search for fonts is a waste. While some true type or open type fonts can convert nicely into embroidery with certain automated tools, even that result often requires editing to the point that drawing the shapes from which the letters are made takes less time than editing them down from the true type originals, particularly if the quality of the original font vector is less than spectacular, and it can often be the case, especially with decorative display fonts. When faced with a raster original, JPEGs, bitmaps, PNGs, things of that nature, and it's of decent quality, let alone if you have good vector source, the chances are any mildly skilled digitizer can recreate a small group of characters from true type, from the true type source. It's going to be slower. Usually we can do that small group of characters ourselves as fast or faster than we could do the conversion with the small character counts we find in a logo type. If you imagine the time spent identifying, finding, installing, and editing down the characters in the true type source, especially if you don't have any idea about the name or the origin of the typeface, if you've got a small set of 5 to 10 characters in a regularly simple font like we see in most typefaces for logo types, you're likely better off drawing the shapes themselves than searching for the font as far as it comes to efficiency. Think of a company name. Let's imagine Dennis Digital Designs. It sounds like it's a lot of characters, but it only has 9 original glyphs in it. Count them out and you'll see what I'm talking about. The rest of it is copy and paste. If this font were in a simple sans serif, the lowercase l and an I might be literal 4-point objects or a couple groups of 4-point objects to draw. The rest is all cut and paste. This is even more evident with short names and titles. If I see the name Hall or Bell on something, I'm not going to go search for the font because I've got 3 original characters to draw. If my art is clear enough, there's very little reason for me to go trolling the internet to try and find that original font. The truth is, though, there are times we should search. So when should we search for a font, whether the true type original art or an existing embroidery font? When should we search for it? Truthfully, it's down to whether or not we can see what we need to see to do our work, especially when we're talking about looking from the art. If the image isn't clear enough to guide you toward the clean edges you need for the font, or if you need to alter the text by adding text or adding characters that you don't have in your original art or sample, then you might be stuck searching for the font. That said, this doesn't necessarily mean you should spend your time searching for an embroidery-ready, pre-digitized version. Much like the earlier rule of thumb, due to the fact that you're frequently renamed or altered for scale, pre-digitized fonts may be even more laborious to find than their true type or open type originals. Again, if you only have a few characters to digitize, the chances are you are better off just digitizing those characters than going straight to the pre-digitized fonts or looking for a digitized alternative. So when should we use pre-digitized fonts? Well, glyphs are complex shapes. They take considerable time to create. If the stock keyboard digitized font, the font that is ready for embroidery, is of sufficient quality and the customer is agreeable and it matches exactly to what you have in the original art, stock fonts can and should be used in those circumstances. This doesn't mean, however, that we should ever replace fonts with unmatched stock keyboard lettering, especially in logo types. Using a good enough font inside of the logo type means making your customer's embroidery look like a knockoff of their own brand. That said, department names, mottos, other personalization under logos, or if we have like a left chest logo and a right chest name and division, these should almost always be executed in stock fonts because they are highly customized and personalized and need to be changed readily. With the advent of the ability to replace or add alternate glyphs in some digitizing software, we can even tweak our commonly used keyboard fonts if we only have a couple of points of difference from a font that we need to use for a customer who's around and needs that quality, but also needs that editability, that personalization. Whether we're doing team naming or dropping a division name under a corporate logo, though, we do want to make sure that we are accurate to brand guidelines. Remember, though, whenever we're doing this thing, this is for commercial embroidery, and commercial embroidery is just that. It's commerce. The more time we spend, the less margin we're being paid. So we need to make sure that we control our effort and break out from this common fallacy that we have to search for every font that we find, especially searching for something installable as far as stock fonts. Hey, the hunt might be fun, but the opportunity cost and reduced efficiency isn't worth the thrill of the chase. And that is my secret sauce.
All right.
Awesome.
Yeah. Delicious, Eric. Thank you very much for that secret sauce. All you embroidery folks out there just got another master class in about 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes there. So thank you, Eric. All right, Terry. Well, we've come to the close of our show. I'm not sure this is a record for us, but I think we've done pretty well. So we packed in a lot today. I don't think we normally at the beginning before shows, you know, Terry, you and I, or mainly you, are going, do we have enough content for today? And I don't think we had that problem today. So
right. I've got a couple of questions as we were going. So
yeah. Such good stuff from Gary and Cassie. So thanks to them for coming on here, and thanks for doing what they're doing to kind of keep moving our industry forward, you know, and making us aware of what we need to watch out for, the troubles ahead with the 4-letter word, and then also just understanding sustainability. I think that's a huge service that they do for the industry. So thanks to them for coming on and sharing with us here today.
All right. We also want to thank our show producer, Eric Campbell, for staying up very late last night, working on the outline and coming on and being live on camera as well.
Yeah. Great job, Eric. And thank you very much. All right, you guys. So next week's show, Eric and Terry are going to let me run the program. So any damage that I do, I'm going to blame them. Okay. No, I'm going to invite my good friend Dane Clement to join me for the whole show next week. And we're going to kind of do a open ask us anything. So I figure, you know, when you've got a guy like Dane around, that we know we can gain a lot of knowledge when it comes to artwork design and production design. Plus, he just has such a great knowledge and understanding. He spends so much time making sure he's up to speed on everything going on in the AI artwork world. You know, being somebody that is traditionally trained and has those abilities, and then also still embracing AI, I think that's a huge bonus. And so he's not just one of those AI guys out there that we hear sometimes that, oh, we're just spitting out tons and tons of stuff, right? But what they forget to tell you is that they're just spitting out tons and tons of crap. So, so anyhow, just using AI as a tool to embrace artwork and whatnot. So but here's the deal. It's open. It's an open ask us anything. So if you want to talk AI artwork, you want to talk, and hopefully I can be a little bit helpful and answer any questions that you guys might have for me as well. So Terry, you're letting the inmates run the asylum. So again, I put this on you.
I am leaving for Cabo in the morning, Kim and I, and I'll be back before Friday, but your outline will be pretty easy. It'll just say, start talking.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, exactly. So welcome. Let's do this. Right. So
all right. Until then, I'm Terry Combs. He's Aaron Montgomery.
And that was the Two Regular Guys.
Here we go. We're out.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to Two Regular Guys. Check out our website at tworegularguys.com. That's the number 2, regularguys.com. You can also interact with us over at our Facebook page, facebook.com/tworegularguys, or send us a tweet, twitter.com/2regularguys. And we have a YouTube page. You can find all that from our website, 2regularguys.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to spending some time with you again next week.